This right here is The Wizard of War, and this is take number 2 after I record this entire 20-minute video with 720p 30, so whatever. Anyway, this is a game I got a couple weeks ago. The story kind of starts with this guy here. I got the control panel kind of looking better, and it's not, obviously this material isn't the same as like the original control panel, but anyway, I joined Clav to get some advice on how to make the control panel look a little bit better now that since I got the reproduction art. And the suggestion I got was to try and use carbon fiber, or no, not carbon fiber, it's fiberglass resin to fill in the holes. So I just used the blue buttons to fill in the holes to plug up the holes that I wanted, and had them wrapped in tape. And then cut or covered off the ends of the holes with tape, and then poured fiberglass resin in there, and it turned out pretty good. You got the original holes here back in action here, and everything's all looking good. Applied that artwork and stuff, and this thing's got a lot better look than it had when I first got this thing in the garage. So that's looking pretty cool, even though it's still a little bit beat up. But I mean, that's kind of just part of its character. It's battle scars. Anyway, so I joined Clav and got some advice on this thing, and I was thinking about it. Maybe I'd have enough room to put like 4 cabinets, like maybe I have a junked up vertical monitor cabinet I could put like a main thing in or something, or maybe I'd build myself another one of these for like a vertical machine, and then I'd have like room for 2 dedicated cabinets of games that I'd absolutely love to have the actual hardware for. And I kind of came up with like a list for myself. Let me turn the heater, it's a little bit chilly. So I came up with a little bit of a list. Maybe I'd have like, Galaga. Maybe I'd want a Robotron. Maybe I want a Wizard of War, stuff like that. And then about like 2 days or 3 days after I joined that forum, a thread went up in the for sale section of games for sale in Idaho, and Wizard of War was in there. I was like, shit, now I gotta go get it, because Idaho is doesn't really have a big market for stuff like this. So the next time I'd see a game like this and this good condition, I mean, that's not going to really happen. So yeah, this is the Wizard of War. There's only 3 things on here that I'm aware of that is not original, and that would be the monitor, which got replaced, and then it's got a high score saves kit for the game board there, so it can save high scores, and then the control panel overlay art is reproduction, but everything else is original, like this badass marquee here, and the art on the side with this little bit of wear and tear over 40 years of existence. Also, I noticed on a lot of pictures and videos online of this, the Wizard of War or title here gets worn away. I don't know if it's whether it's like the sunlight or someone's rubbing their hands all over it, but it turns like absolutely yellow to match this, so you don't even see the title. So that's looking pretty good. Yeah, I like it. I was kind of joking a while on Discord saying that this is like the Mecha Hitler here, Wizard of War, because he's sitting here doing this Roman salute, and then there's a line he says in the game where he says, if you kill my babies, I'll pop you in the oven, or something like that. So it's kind of a joke. Yeah, it's got this art on the front here. This is pretty badass looking, even though I don't really know what's going on here. Like your character here, the warrior, his arm is like jutted straight back from his like shoulder there, which is like kind of, he's leaning forward and he's got this thing in his hand. It just looks kind of goofy, but if you don't think about it too hard, it just looks kind of badass. And you got the wizard here just like shooting lasers and shit like that. It's a little bit dusty because I was working on some stuff. I'll clean that off. But yeah, the other side's there too. A little bit less warmed up here, but it's got some faded spots. But I mean, that's fine and dandy. Oh yeah, and this coin door right here, like, my dad used to have a whole bunch of arcade machines in the basement. That's what kind of got me interested in arcade machines. I mean, for the longest time, I've actually kind of wanted a couple arcade machines of my own, but like arcade cabinets, whatever. And I didn't really think that would be possible. Like, there's not really much anything on Craigslist or anything until, this thing kind of threw me in the loop here. But, this coin door just reminds me of Space Invaders, so I think it had the same logo on there. It just looks like Space Invaders to me. I don't know. Also, when I was at work, I went ahead and printed myself like a 70 page or 150 page, 150 side, like 70 page or some math like that. about 70 pages of manuals here, but yeah, nowadays you would not get schematics and shit in your manuals for anything. So this is just like a relic of a days long gone. It's kind of interesting. Anyway, let me stick this back in here. I just kind of have that hanging out in there. We'll fire it up and play a game, and I'll explain how it's played, and we'll dig into the guts and see what's in there. I got the lights out to see it quite properly. I think the monitor inside of it's a little bit tired out, but you turn it on by hitting this little switch up here, if my camera would focus. Wow, this thing sucks. It's a little push switch. It's not like a little rocker switch like this right here, a toggle switch. You gotta push it in. It's got a little bit of a 60 hertz hum. I don't know if that's something wrong with the amplifier or if that's just normal for it. Let me pop this in the thing here. As you can see, it's booting up with the high score saves thing. If you hit the start button, it'll bring up the menu where you can set all your dip switch settings in the menu, since it doesn't have a ROM board in it, which would usually have your dip switch settings, I think. Either that or it's the game board that has the dip switch settings, but I have, demo sounds on and stuff. Coin A, I don't know why I have 2 coins per credit. That's kind of silly. I want not that. 1 coin, 1 credit. That's more like it. Let's go hit the start button. So the controls are a little bit weird, since usually on these arcade cabinets you'd have, player 1 on the left side, player 2 over here, but it's a little bit backwards. I think this is like one of the first games you have cooperative play. And being that it is one of the first games with cooperative play, you have an AI cooperative player character to play along with you. Anyway, let me grab a couple quarters. You can do free play on this, but I like dropping a quarter in here. It's kind of cool. Also, it lets me select between 3 warriors and 7 warriors, because you can stick 50 cents in here to get some extra lives and play the 7 warrior game, as you can see on this side. Anyway, these were the enemies. You got, your Bird War, Gar War, Thor War, Warrior. So, anyway, you got Warlock for double score dungeons and all that stuff. So, the game starts out with 6 Burr Wars. And those are just regular enemies. Let me just coin this thing up. That sounds pretty cool. Hit the start button. So level 1 starts out with like the 6 Burr Wars here. You just shoot them and they die until the last one. When you shoot the last one, it spawns a Gar War. You see the blue guy over there is killing some dudes. And those guys disappear until they are in your line of sight, and you can see them on the radar. So every time you pass a level, you get another set of those guys. So by the 6th level, you got like a bunch of those guys running around. It turns into chaos. Starting with the 2nd level, you get the Warlock coming in. Yeah. Get out of here. Oh, listen to that voicing. Whoop. Oh shit, he got dead. So yeah, when you kill the Warlock, you get double score dungeon. I like that. That's just cool. Also, you can get shot by your computer ally if standing in the way between him and an enemy. He'll try and shoot the enemy and shoot you instead, so you need to be careful. Also, the Warlock will also try and go to the opposite door of where he spawns, so... On the 4th dungeon, you get a bonus player, and you get tossed into the arena, which is a rather open level, which is kind of difficult because you can only have one shot on the screen at a time, so you don't want to get caught in a long corridor, otherwise you might be left helpless if something comes around the corner. They can dodge your bullets pretty easy, so... Like they'll sometimes, yeah, like that, where he kind of goes halfway into the corridor and then just leaves immediately. Hopefully I don't get dead here. Oh, yeah. Oh, watch me just walk right into that. And randomly, after killing the Warlock, you'll get the Wizard of War to show up. I don't think I've ever gotten to Dungeon 8 where the voice starts calling you a warlord instead of a warrior. That's where things get a little bit more difficult. He's gonna try and sneak around back, isn't he? Oh. Come on. No, don't run away. There we go.
You will never leave war alive. Ta 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 ta.
Oh shit, now I'm getting shot. Dungeon 6 starts getting hard. They get fast quick, and then you got all the sets of Gar Wars and Thor Wars. That's a little basic overview of the game itself. It's pretty crazy. Also, if you hit the fire button or touch the controls while it's in, like, you know, game over mode, it'll taunt you, or it'll tell you to put a quarter in the game or something like that, or insert coin. Yeah, this thing is pretty fucking cool. Yeah, this is one of the games I definitely wanted, just because it's got a few things that makes it like the epitome of an 80s arcade game to me. It's really easy to pick up and play. It really wants you to die, because it gets really hard real quick, and then, what else was there that I had thought up? It taunts you with voice synthesis, and then it assaults your senses with, like, flashing lights and ridiculous noise. Like, when the Wizard of War comes up and you kill him, it's like the game's, like, shrieking at you with, like, black and white sparkle effects and crazy stuff. And then you kill the Warlock, and it's, like, blinking the screen, all sorts of colors, and it's just ridiculous. And almost in a way, it kind of has like an American feel to it. Like, while the Japanese games like Taito games and Namco games of the time are a little bit more sophisticated, like Pac-Man or something like that. This is just like it's a little more janky feeling. It's not as refined, I guess, but it's just in your face with these sounds and voice synth, and it's just obnoxious. Sort of like Gorf. Actually, Gorf runs the same hardware as this, so that's kind of where it gets that feel to it. Anyway, let's take a look inside and see what it's got. So as far as the hardware goes, let's check out this coin door here. And apparently this is just like a standard, like, midway cabinet or door here. But it's kind of cool. It has this like little slam switch. Like, if you hit the cabinet hard enough, if this switch makes contact, it will give you an instant game over for abusing the game. Also, it's got the coin mechanisms, but this one right here likes to eat your quarters and all this good stuff, because it has 4 bolts. You can see this has a bolt right here, and a bolt right here, and a bolt right here. It's supposed to have a bolt up here, but it doesn't have one. But that's what holds these coin mechanisms in, and this one right here just has one holding it up right up here. So if you hit the coin reject button a couple times, it starts pushing it out of the thing there. As you can see, it's starting to push it out, and then you can, yeah, that just needs to get a couple bolts. This one works really good. It's got the switches, you know, to give you a credit once you drop a quarter through there. And it's got these little sheet metal, like little chutes that drop the quarters down. Well, this one's kind of coming apart, it looks like. This tack weld or whatever is just coming apart. Well, that's no big problem. It still works. You got a couple lights. Got the coin counter, which counted to 48,000, almost 49,000 quarters. It's disconnected right now. It's just kind of hanging out there. I need to figure out where that goes. Then we got a test switch, which will bring up a grid on the screen and tests all the controls and the sounds and stuff like that. So that's a pretty handy little diagnostic tool. And yeah, that's all of that for the coin door. And much like the Double Dragon, where it has this drawer that comes out and exposes the game hardware, this also opens up. There are a couple latches down inside. If I stick my hands in there and unlatch it, be careful with it so I don't bang it. I'm going to put my knee up against there so it doesn't slam down. Shut this and get it out of the way. Hold on, and here we go. And there's a little pill bug. Get out of here, dude. Oop. Go. Get out of here. So this is the hardware. It all slides out on this little tray, and oh, slipped. Yeah, wow. That's a lot of stuff to be running a simple game like that. But this is 1980. So yeah, this thing is pretty cool. Here we have, I think this is the isolation transformer right here for the monitor. I think this is the transformer for the game with the different voltage outputs and stuff like that. And this is the big-ass linear power supply, which I know nothing about, but it has this huge aluminum, like extruded aluminum heatsink on here for these transistors or whatever. And then it's got these big ol' I forgot what the word is, but they have like the leads on both sides. These big old electrolytic capacitors, and I'm not sure if I need to replace those, but it might be a good idea. I'll have to look into that because, you know, these old power supplies, you never know if it's going to fail in such a way that it will overvolt, you know, the game hardware and ruin something. And I really don't want that to happen. I'd like to maintain this thing so where it will keep on running instead of running it into the ground to where it breaks stuff that's a little bit more expensive to replace, like this right here. Speaking of which, this is a card rack Bally Midway system here, and there are a couple games that share similar hardware, such as Space Zap and Gorf and Robbie Roto. I think all the games share stuff like the RAM cards right here. That's all share. Then you have the game board, which is game specific. It provides features for the specific games. We got the pattern board here, which is for generating the objects in the game, I'm pretty sure. I saw a couple of videos where the pattern board was bad and it just kind of drew shit all over the screen, and you had multiple character sprites and crazy stuff like that. And last here we have the CPU board, which has this high score saves kit installed, which replaces the ROM board. So there's supposed to be another board right here called the ROM board that obviously has the ROMs for the game, but since the high score saves has to alter the ROM or the game program for it to work, I guess they just slapped it all onto one little chip there. This is all hooked into the CPU socket, so the Z80's on there and all that stuff. It has an Ethernet port on there, because this is the online version where you can plug in the Ethernet and compete with high scores online, which I probably won't ever use. Eventually, I want to get a ROM board for this thing so I can have like the original setup if I so desire to put it in there. But this is pretty handy having this high score saves kit installed, so you can always see whether you're doing better or you're getting worse. Anyway, I'll take a couple of these out and show you what kind of guts they got on them. So this works similarly to, you know, the PC98 C-bus slots, where it has the plastic things on the end that you can use to disconnect it. Also, it has a rail that it rides on, which are also, well, these rails are right down in here, which also contact the ground plane here. But this is a RAM board. Yeah, it's got nothing but RAM, but these capacitors right here will probably have to go. Those are tantalum capacitors, and if they fail, well, your game doesn't work anymore. You just need to replace those, so maybe that's something else I need to look into getting. We got a cool little ceramic chip right here, along with all the rest of these plastic chips. That's kind of cool. So yeah, Bally Midway. This is I think it's a RAM card. Yep. So that's just a RAM card. Slap this back in here. So now the downfall of these Bally Midway games. Let me grab the game card here and let me be careful with the connector. Ooh, this is the Wizard of War game card. And, or where does it say that at? Yeah, see, Wizard of War game board. This is where all the game-specific stuff happens. We got these two custom chips here, and then the speech synthesis chip here. These customs get a little bit warm. If these die, you're kind of SOL. You have to get like another board set to replace it, which sucks. I think one of these you can go without. If you were to completely disconnect them, you'd be able to play the game, but you'd be missing one of your 2 sound channels, and you'd be just hearing the player sounds and not the boom boom in the background. So yeah, it'd be nice. Maybe in the future, I'd like to get like a spare board for just in case something like that goes out, or maybe like get heat sinks for these just to make it so they'll last longer. I mean, these lasted like this for 40 years, but I mean, it couldn't hurt to get a little bit extra cooling going on. But yeah, that's a game board. That's the speech synthesis chip. I think that's a, well, it's SCO1. I think it's there's a name for it, but I forget. But that's also why that this card is on the very end here. And it has this space in between, is so you get a little bit more airflow by those custom chips. Oh. Make sure that gets in there. Pattern board is pretty boring. It's just a boring board with a bunch of ICs, but this is what draws your sprites and stuff like that, I'm pretty sure. I think I've seen a couple of videos online where one of these has failed, and it just draws multiples of sprites and makes a mess and just smears shit all over the screen. So this is what controls some of the video. I think Space's app also uses the same board, and Gorf. I think most of the games on this card rack system use the same board. As far as I know, most of those chips are generic chips you can probably find replacements for if you needed to. And the last board right here is the CPU board, but I'm not going to take that out because you've seen that it has this high score saves kit sticking out past this bar right here. You have to take this bar off to get the card out. But there is one thing notable about it, is that there is a particularly high failure rate custom IC that's sitting right here. Some of the later games like Gorf and some later cabinets of Wizard of War, I'm pretty sure they put a heatsink on that one because it gets a little bit warm. So that's one I'm definitely going to get a heatsink for. All these cards have that same tantalum capacitor down there at the bottom, so if those die, then your board kind of just stops working temporarily until you cut it out of the circuit or get replacements. But that's for line or DC filtering, so you definitely want to get that back on there just to make sure it's getting nice clean power. So yeah, those are a couple maintenance items that I'm thinking about with this thing, just to make sure it's going to keep on trucking as time goes on. Also, it has a one of these interlocks right here, so if you open up the front panel, it's not going to toast you. But also, I noticed, or something I learned, is that you can just pull them out to bypass them. I didn't know that when I was working on the Double Dragon cabinet, so I just taped it shut until the tape slips and turns the thing on when you didn't, or turns it off when you didn't want it to. Anyway, I'll slide this back in here and I'll open up the back. One thing you want to make sure of when you're sliding this back, I was being very careful when I was sliding it back the first time. You see this harness right here, the harness cable. It's just kind of hanging out back here. If you just slam this in, this metal piece right here will catch that, and I don't want to damage that because that would be bad. So you gotta kind of move it out of the way when you're pushing that back in, and you're good to go. Another interesting thing is about the controls. When I was making my RPicade video, I was saying that I'd imagine that Wizard of War plays just like the original cabinet, basically on that, minus a couple, sound differences and stuff like that. However, there is a difference in the controller, and it's not just the switch type. Let me pull this out here. All right, hung up on something. There we go. I set it down. So yeah, this is an older game, so you're gonna have the leaf switch or leaf spring switches. But if you're paying attention, you'll notice that each set of switches or each direction on the joystick has 2 switches. So if you push the left button, I think, or this might be right. You push it a little bit, it makes the first contact, and then if you push it all the way, it makes a second contact. So what that does is if you make the first contact, it turns your character, but it doesn't move him. But if you move it all the way, then it will move your character and turn him. So it's a little bit of a nuance when playing the actual game that is kind of interesting. I think that one might be touching. I think that's a little bit too close. Might have to adjust that, but yeah, that's kind of an interesting thing. This side's a little bit worn out. You can see there's a little piece right here that's a little bit broken. That should be right there, but it means you just have to get a little bit farther to the left to make him move left. I might have to find like a replacement part for that or something like that for that stack, but that's for later. That's kind of an interesting little nuance that you don't quite get with emulation. Now if you look at it, you might notice that this cabinet's actually not that deep. I think that's I was told that was kind of like a thing with these midway cabinets where they tried to make them not so deep, but in order to do this, you kind of have to have a bubble in the back to protect the monitor, because the monitor's neck actually kind of extends past the back of the cabinet. So, we got some nice, vent holes here for, convection, cooling, because, the heat rises and comes out the top, and you got air going in at the bottom. Got a little key here to open this up. Tilt it back, grab it. Oh. Let's set this over here. Set it to the side. And that's just the back of the cabinet, and inside we have a lot of stuff. So here's the monitor. This is a replacement monitor that the last owner put in. The last owner was the guy behind Idaho Garagecade, that blog, Idaho Garagecade. It's kind of interesting if you go to his blog and look up his article or whatever or his post about Wizard of War. It's about this cabinet here, and when he got it originally, the previous owner before that had the wrong chassis for the tube. I think they swapped the tube with something else, or no, maybe they had the chassis that was for a bigger monitor, but the same tube. So in order to make the chassis work for the smaller tube, he had 3 deflection coils or 3 yokes hooked up to it. So he had a yoke just hanging out over here and a yoke just hanging out over here. And that was kind of interesting, to say the least. But yeah, that's kind of weird. So yeah, if you look up his blog, you'll see what kind of chaos was going on inside of here. So this is a monitor he installed into it to replace it because the tube was just shot. So yeah, here we got the volume controls. On the front there, you can adjust the volume just by opening up the coin door. And just got more interlocks. You got 3 speakers up there, 1 per channel. The middle one's for, the voice, and then that one's for like player sounds. That's for background noise. Then you got this over here, and this is a RGB conversion board. So this hardware right here, which actually shares a lot in common with the Bally Astrocade. I think the Bally Astrocade home console is a little bit of a cut down version of this. It actually has some of the custom chips that are on this board set here, but it outputs composite, or I think through here. Yeah, it outputs composite over to here, and this board right here converts it to RGB to be usable by the monitor. So it's a little bit interesting, but yeah, it's a monitor. If you take a look at the front, let me just show the volume controls over here. Pull this down, you can see the 3 different volume potentiometers for adjusting the controls, or the volume, per channel, so you can do a little bit of balancing there if one's a little bit too loud or a little bit too quiet. But yeah, I think I got a couple things I got to do to this thing just for maintenance purposes, keeping it going, but I think this cabinet is just badass. They crammed a lot of stuff in just like the small area here. It's a bit of a mess, but it's pretty badass. I like it. I got some wire nuts going on here. That's kind of janky. I don't know if that's original or not. That must be original. Maybe. Yeah, this thing is pretty freaking cool. But yeah, I'm definitely glad to have this. This is just definitely one of the games I would have liked to own the actual hardware for, and now I do. So there's a little bit of everything running. And it's a little bit noisy in here. The homemade arcade cabinet almost looks like it could fit in. It just needs a little bit more art, and I kind of put the Tao Taito art up on there because the lights are a little bit too bright to be playing games on, but yeah, it's pretty cool. And don't mind MAME over there, it's kind of screwing up with the highest scores on Double Dragon, but yeah, that's definitely neat. Now, if you wanted to get really crazy about it, you could always just set all three of them to the same game. Well, two of them with the same game. And now if you really wanted to, you can all credit them all up and then have the AI characters do a race and see who can get the furthest or have the most score. So yeah, that's the Wizard of War. It's a cool game. That's a cool cabinet.